Now I know what you're thinking. This is a funny title. Is Baldur's Gate 3 like Skyrim? But I want to break this down because these games do have a lot of similarities despite being very different genres of game. So I have hundreds of hours in both of these, so I just wanted to compare and contrast both these games because they're both incredible. Skyrim coming out in 2011, Baldur's Gate 3 coming out in 2023. There's obviously some gaps in between them, but I'm going to be going over a lot of different things like their modding communities, the overall mods for these, and just some general differences in comparisons between these two games. Now, I honestly do think that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to have a long shelf life, similar to how Skyrim is still a game that's very popular to this day. That's because of the mods. And now Baldur's Gate 3 just allowed mods to be loaded through their game themselves, and you can actually do it with relative ease because it allows you to download them in the game and play them as you go. So this is also the same now with Skyrim and even Fallout 4, so I guess I can even throw Fallout into this mix. But just looking at the amount of mods for each of these games, Skyrim and Skyrim Special Edition having almost 100,000 mods. That's a ton of mods. Because just think about the amount of time and effort that goes into making a mod. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. Skyrim Base Edition has 72,000 mods. Fallout 4 has 61,000 mods. And this is with 5.2 billion downloads in the Skyrim Special Edition and almost 2 billion for Skyrim itself. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 does have 200 million downloads with about 10,000 mods made for the game. Now, this is split because there is mods on the Mod.io website, and there's some other places you can get mods for Baldur's Gate 3. Kind of similar to Skyrim, but Nexus Mods being the biggest supplier of mods. Now, if you look at this over a long period of time, if you're to maximize this out over the 13 years that Skyrim has existed, Baldur's Gate 3 would have probably a similar amount of downloads to the Skyrim Special Edition. So that's not to include the mods that are downloaded now throughout the base game themselves. And the base game has already had 3 million mod downloads. So that's within the opening weekend of mods being added to the game. So as mods come to console, PlayStation 5, Xbox, I expect that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to have a bunch of mod downloads as well, but I'm going to be getting into the quality of the mods that are brought into both of these games. I know that Skyrim has some incredible mods, and even to another extent, Fallout New Vegas, which has a mod that allows you to play Fallout 3 in it if you own both games. You can connect the games together. So modders have done a lot of really cool things over the years, and I just wanted to break this down because Skyrim has had a ton of different mods over the course of the last 13 years. And you can also get mods on the consoles, both PlayStation 5 and Xbox. Now, little asterisk there because PlayStation 5 mods are not that great on Skyrim because Sony limits the assets to only in-game assets. And the thing with Skyrim is Baldur's Gate 3 has a lot more assets to work with. I've already seen in the mod manager itself, tons of different mods were made with just in-game assets already because there's so many unique NPCs that you can get different faces for. There's a bunch of different races and spells that can be made, and the sky is pretty much the limit when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3. Now, the reason that the sky is a limit when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3 is builds really matter when it comes to Baldur's Gate. In Skyrim, you just have one single skill tree that you're leveling up. So you can obviously become overpowered by leveling every single skill up. So it doesn't have that same level of detail, whereas in Baldur's Gate 3, you go up to level 12, and there are mods that allow you to go up to level 20, and a lot of these mods allow your builds to have like level 14 spells and even different class features at higher levels. So there's a lot of detail put into that, and I think it's really well done. This is a Rune Knight fighter build that I'm using. It's a DLC one in Baldur's Gate 3. So just to go to show, there's tons of different options that we got already at launch, basically, for the mods, and a bunch more are coming. So as far as the modding details, I think that Baldur's Gate 3 has a bit more that could be potentially done with things, although there's been a ton done. Like, I think we've seen the extent of Skyrim modding. I don't know if there's going to be anything else that really blows us away as far as mods in Skyrim go, but some of the most popular Skyrim mods, the UI mod, Skyrim HD. I guess this isn't even to include mods for Skyrim for the VR version, because I played that game with some mods. That is a very wonky experience, I'll be honest, but just the base game Skyrim, for a 13-year-old game, it still plays pretty good. So there's a lot of mods, like different hair, Book of Silence, texture replacers, tons of texture replacers, immersive armors, a quality world map, so much better world map in Skyrim. Like, there's been a ton of things that have been added to the game that I think do enhance the game itself. But Baldur's Gate 3 is starting to see a lot of these too. I think some of the biggest mods for Skyrim that I enjoyed downloading were ones like the fauna overhaul, which just makes the world more beautiful. Like you've probably seen tons of videos of Skyrim with a bunch of mods making the game look beautiful. The thing is, Baldur's Gate 3 already looks quite beautiful of a game. Like we have very high detailed character models, and the world itself is beautiful. That is obviously because the game came out 13 years later, so there's a lot that can, or 12 years later, there's a lot that can be done over the course of that amount of time in terms of game development. But I love Skyrim. I remember getting it the day it came out as a youngster and putting hundreds of hours into it. I've bought in Skyrim 6 different times, so I'm someone that loves Skyrim, and it was one of my favorite games. And I thought that this was the alpha omega of games for games that can mod, as I didn't think we could get a game that would have more going on than something like Skyrim. But I think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to give it a run for its money. So just to look at some of the mods that are in Skyrim, like these just make the game look better. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 does have some reshaders, although I don't think I need to use them with Baldur's Gate 3 because the game already looks amazing so far. One of the biggest things, both of these games do have bugs, but there's a little asterisk here. Skyrim still has a ton of bugs, and even to go back and talk about Fallout, I was playing Fallout when the TV show came out on stream, and I had glitches right at the start of the game that broke the game. So, I mean, Bethesda does have a known reputation for having games at launch and have a ton of issues with them, but I digress. I think that some of the most impactful mods in Skyrim is actually the mods that patch all the issues out. Now, that's what makes modding communities great, is that they can help fix your game. But again, some of the best mods in this game are the ones that make the game look more beautiful. I do like some of the new weapons. I've tried a ton of different mods over the years, and there's pretty much anything you can think of. Like having 10,000 or 100,000 different mods, that's a lot of options. So not all of them are good mods. I'll be fully honest with you, but they have literally a mod to correct the appearance of anything. Like this makes the fire look less like a little cloud, more like actual fire. HD effects being some of the most popular mods in Skyrim, because again, it's a game that's a little bit aged. So Baldur's Gate 3, as far as their mods go, are adding tons of content already, and I do expect this to continue as the game develops. So the number one so far is Mod Fixer. This is just to help fix out with mods, and this is actually now in the base game itself, so you don't actually need the most popular mod for Baldur's Gate 3 anymore, because Larian made it something that's built into the game now, so that's really nice. So if you have this download, you can uninstall it. But some of the most popular ones, improving the UI, very common. People love the UI mods. But Tav's Hair Salon, which is one that I'm using off here, it gives more hairstyles than even the base game has, and they all have nice physics to them. They all look great. You can dye your hair however you see fit. So some of these are incredible. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 does draw from 5th edition D&D. So there's a lot of mods that add things from D&D that weren't ported into the game, because there's a lot in Dungeons & Dragons. I don't know if you guys ever seen books from Dungeons & Dragons, but they're thick books with tons of things in them, and that's just like a small piece of what's going on in Dungeons & Dragons. So this here has a huge list of spells. So here's all the cantrips, level 1 spells, level 2 spells, level 3, 4, 5, 6, and then higher level spells. So you can see here, that's a huge amount of spells. That's more spells than in Skyrim, and it's just a mod that adds more to the game. So that itself is pretty cool. Baldur's Gate 3 is also a team-based game. You have usually a team of 4 players, or 4 characters, and you can play this with your friends. Now, I know you can get mods to play Skyrim with friends, but the ability to play a game with mods with your friends is a huge benefit for Baldur's Gate 3. Like, whenever you go to play a game with Baldur's Gate 3, you can even use mods that increase the party count from above 4. Whenever you're playing with friends, it'll prompt you to make sure you have all the same mods installed. So you can play with pretty much all the mods that you see here that I'm using. And yeah, that is incredible alone. Being able to mod your games and play with friends and have that all built into the game is just a truly unique experience. And I think that that's something that's really nice. And I hope other developers looking forward to creating games look to add multiplayer and allow you to mod with your friends, because I think that that adds a lot of fun to the game. So a lot of the mods are cosmetics, like the basket full of equipment here. This is a single mod, and that's a safer work one. 900 different pieces of equipment. So that is just a single mod that adds literally 900 pieces of armor, and they're all unique looking pieces of armor too. Like, this is just an example, like there's a ton here. We could go over this all video, but I'm not even going to get into the details of that because there's just so many choices. Also with that, there's different styled heads. Native camera tweaks is the mod that I'm using here. It allows you to move your camera all which ways. WASD movement. So these two I really enjoy, and I don't think Skyrim really has a counterpart for that because just due to nature, Baldur's Gate 3 you normally click, and the camera wasn't as freely move-aroundable as this. But these two mods make it play similar to Dragon Age Origins, and they're entirely optional. But yeah, there's just so much going on in Baldur's Gate 3, giving us a slew of different options for creating your own unique character and your own unique Dungeons & Dragons playthrough. Now, where I think that there's some benefits to playing Skyrim, I know that Skyrim added in, there's some mods for Skyrim that allow you to go to different areas in the world. Now, I don't think that is going to come to Baldur's Gate 3 just due to limitations with the game itself. And we also, with Baldur's Gate 3, like it is limited with the mod creator. Like Larian did put out a toolkit, but it doesn't allow you to create new levels or quests. And I can understand why, because there is Dungeons and Dragons based games similar that they don't want you to take away from. So with Skyrim, it's just Skyrim, Morrowind, Oblivion, etc. So there are a bunch of mods for Skyrim that allow you to go to different worlds and different things like that. And a lot of creativity in that, which I think is really nice. But not likely to come to Baldur's Gate 3. Also, since this game is older, again, I mentioned that there's a bunch of... You can make Skyrim look however you want it to look. Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have that yet. Again, the game is only a year old, so it's not to say that this won't come eventually, but Skyrim does have a ton of mods available already, so that's one thing I do expect to see happen over the course of time. Like with Baldur's Gate 3 already having 10,000 mods, and now having their own in-house mod manager in the game, I think that this opens up the floodgates for a ton of different things to come forward, and I'm all for that because I think that games adding in modding just extends the shelf life. Now, Skyrim is a game that you likely will still see people playing 10 years from now, and I think the same for Baldur's Gate 3. This is a game that people are going to be playing 10 years in the future. People are still playing Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 despite being very dated games. They're 20 years old, and people still play them pretty commonly. I actually have a lot of people that comment on my videos that say they play Baldur's Gate 2 and they update me on their playthroughs. Baldur's Gate 3 will likely be a game people are going to be playing for years to come. And that's where I think that these two games are the most similar, is they're very well done games. Skyrim got about 9.5 out of 10 reviews. Like some people did give it a 10 out of 10. There are problems with Skyrim though. Like it is extremely buggy. Baldur's Gate 3 is not without bugs either, but just the way that the story works out in Baldur's Gate 3, like you can do one thing at the very start of the game and then 200 hours later it can have an effect. So that obviously can lead to some bugs coming up, but I played through Baldur's Gate 3 like multiple times and I've only had a few, none that were major. But as I said, with Bethesda games, I even played Fallout 4 recently and had it bug out on me. So yeah, I do think these games are quite similar. I'm curious what your thoughts are because these games aren't the same genre at all, but they do have a lot of similarities, and modding being one of the biggest similarities between them. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.